I'm David with Egg Farmers of Alberta, and we're excited to be here today at Kings Lake Colony to take a tour of their layer barn with George, the eggman. Hey, George. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Morning.
Good to see you again.
You too.
How are things going?
Good.
Well, thanks for having us out to the farm. It's
Sure.
always fun to get out here, so I appreciate you hosting us for this tour. What have you been up to this morning? What does a typical morning look like for you here in the barn?
Yeah, so basically I come down in the morning and the first thing I do is I turn on the computer. I bring up my programs, make sure they ate the feed, they drank water, and the ventilation looks okay.
Yeah, it's impressive to see the amount of data that you were able to look at right here and look into your birds. And I know a big thing for the egg industry is our on-farm food safety program, Start Clean, Stay Clean. And I know it's a lot of paperwork for all the farmers, but yeah, tell us a little bit about what you log to show what you're doing each and every day.
So we have this book here where we have to log everything to actually put on paper what we say we're actually doing. So here we have to record the high and the low temperature of the cooler. So the eggs have to be between 10 to 13 degrees. And also the minimum and the max humidity, the barn temperatures, the highs and the lows. And we also record how much water they drink each day. So each bird drinks around 180 milliliters of water each day. They eat around 108 to 110 grams of feed per day.
That's great that you track all this information. And can you tell us like the detail to which you can monitor the birds, what they weigh, how much they're eating, how much they're drinking, not only here in the barn, but even when you're not in the barn?
Yeah, so we have in the barn we have weigh scales to weigh each bird. They jump on it automatically and it records the weighing every 5 minutes and it gets sent to the controller. Feed also gets weighed in, so I know every day how much they ate exactly. I can see everything in my office here. When I'm at home in my house, I have a monitoring system.
So monitoring the birds, it's really is a 24/7 responsibility for you as an egg farmer, so that if they're not anything, if anything's not going as planned, you'll get an alert right to your phone, allow you to come into the barn and respond to it.
That's correct.
So George, we get a lot of questions either on our social media feeds or through our website, people calling the office, asking if there's a real farmer in the barn. So why don't you tell us how often you're in the barn, how often you walk down with the birds, just to let people know that there really are real farmers on every egg farm in Alberta.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the technology is awesome, but the farmer still needs to be in the barn, see how the animals are, hear them. But typically I go to the barn in the morning. I walk the barn twice a day, so in the morning and then around 3 o'clock. So 2 times a day I check in for sure.
So George, another question that we get is, knowing that there's a lot of different things that farmers do to care for their birds, what would you say is the most important thing for you as an egg farmer to make sure that those birds are well cared for and that there's high quality animal welfare here on your barn?
Yeah, the most important thing I would say is make sure they always have access to feed and water and good air quality. And that will be the most important thing for me.
George, another question that we get from people, they know that farming, it's in your blood, they know that it's your job, that you take your responsibility seriously and that you do everything you have to do to follow programs, but beyond all that, for you personally, what is the best part about being an egg farmer?
The best part is producing eggs for Albertans. I feel privileged, I enjoy it, and I love it.
So George, we know that egg farmers all across the country have to follow a few different mandatory on-farm programs. Could you tell us a little bit about each of them?
Yeah, so we have the animal care program where we have to visually check the birds for in what conditions they are, so feather coverage, foot health, and then we have the Start Clean, Stay Clean program where we record everything.
And that's our on-farm food safety program to make sure the eggs are healthy.
That is correct.
And then here in Alberta, we're the first province to have an on-farm environmental program, the Producer Environmental Egg Program, or PEEP, I know as we call it. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Yeah, the PEEP is the environmental program where we measure energy usage, water and feed usage, and disposal of manure.
Yeah, George, I think that's amazing that you have all these programs that you're diligently following and logging. And I know it's a big responsibility not only for the farmers, but also we have auditors and field staff from both Egg Farmers of Alberta and Egg Farmers of Canada that are out here checking your barns regularly and working with you to make sure that you're delivering on both those programs, as well as PEEP. So George, I think it's really cool that I walk in and you've got this screen right in front of you with so many different data points that you're monitoring. Can you walk us through what you're able to look at right here from your computer?
Yeah, sure. So this is the man controller, the brains of the operation, and it sends data to this program here, where this is called the production program. And we have here, so barn 1 and barn 2. So barn 1, let's go to barn 1. We have performance, and there's a chart here where it logs what their percentage is in laying.
So on this screen, this is actually showing you how many eggs are laid on a daily basis in both barns?
Yes. So then we have the feed here, where it logs how much they ate every day.
And so you're able to tell here right at a glance how much feed on average the birds are eating in each barn?
Yep, exactly. So these birds eat around 108 to 110 grams per day. And it logs everything on here.
And then you can do the same for water as well?
That's right. Here's the water. It logs the water intake, which should do around 170 to 180.
And then you're also able to monitor not only what the birds are doing, but the barn itself. Like you can look and see what it's like inside the barns, the climate and the air quality and all that kind of stuff.
Here we have the climate, where it gives you the room temperatures, the highs and the lows, and the relative humidity in the barn. And also it will also log the outside temperature.
So George, how important is it when we look at things like temperature, humidity, air circulation, on the overall health and well-being of the birds?
It's very important. We want those birds to be comfortable, not too warm, not too cold.
And what does that do for egg laying? Do you find that when the birds are comfortable in the barn that they lay better?
They sure do. When it gets too warm, they back off a little bit in production and even egg size. When it's cold outside, we have the boilers where we have our heating in the barn. When it's fairly warm outside, we have a misting system.
So really everything that you do in the barn, it's all geared towards making the environment as perfect as possible for the birds so that they're comfortable, so they're happy, they're doing their thing in there and producing good quality eggs for you.
That's right. Also, we measure the animal weight, where we track the weight of the birds, which is very important.
So when you are monitoring the weight of the birds and sort of the trend of their growth, is that just important for you, or is that important for other decisions that you might make that impact the birds down the road?
Absolutely. It's very important that we know what the birds weigh, what they eat, what they drink, when we have to formulate rations.
And so when you figure out what rations, is that just something that you do by yourself here on the colony, or do you work with other people to figure out a feeding strategy for your birds?
I work very closely with Cargill Animal Nutrition out of Lethbridge and with my nutritionist. And I can provide, with this program, I can provide him with the animal weight, which is very important, their feed intake, their water intake, and then he makes the ration, the recipe, and that's what I feed the birds to control egg size and intake.
All right, well, then here's a question for you. I think that's something that we do get asked quite a lot, that you just tell us about the other people that you work with as a farmer, and how important is it for you as a farmer to have a relationship with other key individuals in the poultry industry?
It is very important to have a good relationship with your nutritionist, your feed company that makes your rations, and also your veterinarian. If you have a challenge in the barn with the birds, it's important to have a good relationship with your vet.
And I was just going to ask one more question about the monitoring system. And so you come in here every morning, you can even look at it from home. Does this act as like an early warning system before you have a serious issue in the barn? Are you able to look at all the different data and see that there might be an issue even before it happens?
Yes, it's very important that you monitor it every day so you find the problem before it's a big problem.
All right, George, that's amazing. I thank you for walking us through all the detailed information that you're able to monitor from right here in your office or even on your smartphone at home. But I have to say, with all that talk, I really want to go see what it's like for you to be an egg farmer in action. So can we go see the barn?
Absolutely, let's go.
So George, I know how important biosecurity is on every farm. Can you tell me how biosecurity starts on your farm?
Absolutely. So everybody that comes into my barn has to sign this visitor logbook. So that way we track where everybody's been, where they're coming from, and where they're going.
All right. Yeah, I'll sign in. And if you were joining me on the tour, we'd get every visitor to sign this logbook. And yeah, I know from an industry perspective, the visitor log, it's part of our Start Clean, Stay Clean program. Not only does it safeguard the supply of fresh, nutritious local eggs, but it also helps maintain the health and well-being of the birds. So it is incredibly important. Another thing that I can let you know is if you were really joining me on this tour today, we would read out the Visitor Code of Conduct. Now this is a commitment that every visitor to the farm makes, saying that they agree to follow whatever animal care protocols George tells us to follow. Because when we're in the barn, we may not be the farmer, but we all have a role to play in maintaining high quality animal care. So there you go.
Thank you.
So George, can you explain to us what this physical barrier is here for? What's this all about and what role does it play in biosecurity?
Yes, it's very important to have a physical barrier that people can actually see, where you notice this is the dirty side and this is the clean side. So what I like to do, what I usually do, is I change my boots.
Okay.
I'm going to change my boots now. Let's go.
And that helps make sure that whatever we're tracking into the barn, anything dirty stays out here,
Yes.
and then anything clean stays on the clean side.
So I never make any contact with my feet on this side. And I slip into my shoes here.
All right. And for any guests coming to the barn, we put the first pair of booties on when we got out of our vehicles to make sure that whatever we tracked from wherever we came from onto the farm stays in the car. And then here, when we get to the physical barrier, we want to make sure that whatever we've picked up on our journey from the car into the barn stays outside. So we're going to put on a second pair of booties right over top of the first pair as we get into the clean area. And so as George said, the clean boots never touch the dirty side, and the dirty boots never touch the clean side. All right, are we ready to go to the barn?
Follow me.
So George, this is an impressive looking room. Can you tell me what we're looking at?
We call this the egg packing room. It's where we pack all the eggs into these egg trays.
Can you explain to us how it works?
I sure can. Follow me.
All right.
So here you can see all these eggs. They come from the barn, they get collected, and they get carried onto this egg conveyor. Get carried down here. They come onto these rollers. I visually inspect all the eggs and I pick out the big eggs, cracks, and also all the dirty eggs. So these rollers push these eggs onto this conveyor, and this packer, it neatly packs these eggs into these rolls here. And these flaps you see here, they make sure that all the eggs are pointed down. The tips of the eggs are pointed downwards, so it deflects them downwards into these caps here. So as the eggs get pushed all the way to the end here, this vacuum packer picks up the eggs with air and brings them over into these trays here. So this conveyor pushes these trays onto this conveyor, and this conveyor takes it into the stacker, what we call the stacker, and it stacks these trays into stacks of 6 trays. And then once it's done, it spits them out at the end there.
That certainly makes you more efficient.
It sure does.
Can we see you fire it up?
We sure can. So now we're going to turn on the packer, the conveyor, and now the egg belts. So everything is on. So come over here. So now you see the eggs slowly, nicely get carried down onto these rollers. And here is where I inspect the eggs. You can see them roll nicely here. If there's a crack, I'll find it. If there's a big one, I'll find it. A dirty one, I'll find it. And these rollers push it onto this conveyor here. and it neatly packs them into these rollers. And you can see these deflectors, how they deflect the eggs, point down into these cups.
Wow.
Yep. You can see it moving up here, and this vacuum packer packs them into these trays.
That's really impressive how it's all automated like that.
So you can see here, as the eggs roll into the stacker, it'll pick them up. And right before it puts it down, it turns it. So these trays go like this, and one like this. That makes them stack nice, neatly in stacks of 6. And then once it's done, it'll spit it out at the end there.
So George, how long does it take you every morning to collect eggs here in your barn?
It takes me roughly 1.5 to 2 hours.
Okay, that's not bad. And how many eggs are you collecting in that 1.5 hours?
Around 24,500 eggs.
That's a lot of eggs, and it only takes you an 1.5 hours. That's not bad.
Not bad. Well, with this system, it works pretty fast.
Makes sense. So can you tell me what type of eggs, if I were to go to the grocery store, what type of eggs do you produce here that I'd find in the grocery store?
So we actually produce 2 types of eggs. Your regular standard white egg.
Okay.
And then the other side of the barn, we produce also a white egg, but it has vitamin D in there. So it's vitamin enriched.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about eggs in Alberta and across the country is that whatever type of eggs people want, whether it's a white egg, a brown egg, omega-3, free-run, free-range, vitamin-enhanced, vegetarian, organic, we have farmers, local farmers, who produce eggs for Albertans and Canadians. So that's awesome. I really appreciate you showing us the egg collection today. So George, we're standing here with all these beautiful white eggs, and one of the most common questions that we get all the time, no matter where we are, is what's the difference between a white egg and a brown egg?
So a white chicken will lay a white egg. A brown chicken will lay a brown egg.
That's it? Really? That's the only difference?
Simple as that. That's the only difference.
All right. Then I have another question, which is, what is the difference between a light yolk and a dark yolk?
It all depends what you feed them. If you have more corn in your ration, it'll make a darker yolk. So wheat-based ration will make a lighter yolk, and a corn-based ration will make a darker yolk.
All right.
That's it. No nutrition.
I'm happy you clarified that, and that's why what we hear and what we tell people is that out here in Western Canada, eggs do tend to have a lighter yolk because our diets for the hens are wheat-based. And in Eastern Canada, they tend to be darker because they're usually a corn-based diet because that's what's grown, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Then the last question I have about eggs that we do get a lot is, with the white and brown eggs, the dark yolks, the light yolks, is there a nutritional difference between the different types of eggs?
No, there's no nutritional difference between dark yolks and light yolks. The only nutritional difference is what you feed the birds. If you feed omega in the feed, you'll get an omega egg. If you have vitamin in the feed, more vitamin feed, you'll get a vitamin egg.
Right, so like you said, you produce the vitamin D eggs, which means you've probably got something different in your feed for those birds to bump up the vitamin D that gets passed into those eggs.
That's absolutely right.
All right, well, I'm glad you set the record straight for us.
No problem.
So George, you talked about how many eggs you collect on a daily basis. How many eggs are on this pallet right now?
On this pallet, there are 900 dozens, and that is 10,800 eggs.
I know you were saying too that you have it here on a weigh scale. Do you know how much this weighs, and do you track that from one load to the next?
Yes, I weigh each pallet separately, so it weighs about 1,500 ounce pallet.
So George, we've got this full pallet of eggs, and now I'm wondering where it goes next. What's the next stop for these eggs?
So the next stop for these eggs is in the cooler, in our climate control cooler, which is certified by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, where we have to meet certain guidelines. Try and keep it between 40 to 60 humidity, and also between 10 to 13 degrees Celsius. My cooler is pretty consistent between 11 to 12 degrees.
All right. Well, I won't get in your way. Let's take me to the cooler. George, we've got the eggs here in the cooler, and you talked about the cooler and some of the requirements that you have from the CFIA. Do you have anything telling you how much space you need to have in here, how many eggs you need to be able to store?
Yeah, so typically we have to have 10 days worth of cooler space.
And how often do these eggs get picked up by the grading station? Because we know that's where the eggs go next when they leave the farm.
That's right. So once a week, the egg truck driver comes and picks them all up and takes them to Calgary.
All right, and I know that's another big question that we get. People are always curious about the grocery store. Are they as fresh as other eggs? Are they truly farm fresh? So can you tell us, on average, how long does it typically take from the time eggs are laid on the farm to when they get to the grocery store?
On average, I would say it's around 7 days.
All right, George, well, thanks so much for busting that myth. That's one that we get a lot. People have no idea how fresh the eggs are at the grocery store. So to hear you confirm that it takes about a week from the time they're laid on farm to when they get to the grocery store after a stop at the grading station is amazing. And for people that don't know, the grading station is where eggs go from the farm to get washed. They get inspected through a process called candling. They get weighed or graded, and then they get packaged and shipped out to the grocery store. So George, another common question that we get, people want to know why in Canada they have to refrigerate their eggs, because in other places like Europe and South America, they just leave the eggs on the counter.
When the hen lays an egg, she puts on a protective coating onto the egg.
And then when we take it to the grading station, the first step, washing, washes off that coating. So in order for the egg to stay fresh up until the best before date that gets marked on the carton, you need to leave it in the main body of the fridge. Otherwise it won't stay as fresh right up until that date.
That's right.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
And for anyone who wants to get an egg from a local egg farmer like George, you can go to your favorite grocery store and look for the EQA logo. What that means is egg quality assurance. Every egg farmer in Alberta and across Canada must be EQA certified in order to sell their eggs. That means they're passing all their programs and they are going above and beyond, raising their hens and producing high quality eggs. So speaking of those hens, are we able to go in and see the birds who produce these wonderful eggs?
We sure are.
All right,
Let's go.
Let's go.
So before we go into the birds, I like to put on these coveralls and these shoes. They're used to the color black and these shoes, so I like to do it every time.
And you wear the same thing every time?
I sure do.
Awesome. I guess that's how the birds get to know you.
That's right.
When I see looking here, I can see where the eggs come out from the barn. And so this is that belt that you were talking about that feeds into the packing room when we were over there looking at them.
Exactly. The eggs come out, they go onto this elevator. It brings them up and onto the conveyor, like you seen outside. I'm gonna ask you to put on these coveralls and extra pair of boots, please, before we go into the barn.
It's important for us to maintain our biosecurity.
It is. Yeah. All the extra biosecurity we can do, the better off we are.
Well, I guess, and so I'll be putting on a third pair of booties as we go into the birds, and that pair I'll only wear in with the birds.
Yes.
And so when we're done, I'll take this pair of booties off and leave them here. And then on the way out, I'll leave the second pair of booties at that physical barrier that when we came in, and I'll finally take the first pair of booties off when I get back to my truck.
Yes.
How do I look?
You look great.
All right,
Come on.
we're good to go. So George, remind us again what type of housing you have here in the barn.
We have a Big Dutchman enriched colony housing system.
And how many birds do you have in the barn right now?
Right now we have 12,000 birds in this barn.
What type of birds are they?
The strain of these birds are Lohman LSL birds.
And how old are they right now?
They are 28 weeks old, so they're fairly young.
Nice. So George, can you give us a better look inside the system to let us know what makes it enriched?
Okay, you can open this door here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it flips up nice and slow. Birds stay fairly calm, as you can see.
I can see that. So what is it about this system that led you to choosing this particular enriched system?
There's different features I really liked when I seen them the first time. I'll just point out a couple here. The lights, they're in-cage lights, and each individual part has equal amount of lighting.
Nice.
The top tier doesn't have more than the bottom tier of that.
That makes sense.
There's also the feed trough you can see is inside the system. Normally they're outside here. And so I like this because the birds can, when there's a feeding, they have access to both sides. So there's never any crowding or fighting over feed.
For people that aren't familiar with the enriched system, what makes it enriched? What makes this housing system unique?
It has lots of nice features. So birds like to roam freely. They have lots of space in here. You can see the extra room. They can spread their wings. They can run across the system. They like to perch. So you can see those perch pipes back here.
Yep.
They like to perch there. They also like...
Can I stop you there? I have a question. Is it true that at night, every bird will find perch space and they'll sleep on the perch?
They sure will. When the lights go out and you walk in here, you can see all the birds lined up on these perch pipes back there, all sleeping.
So that's a really important natural behavior that they have the ability to express in these systems.
Yes, they can experience their natural behaviors.
And so what are some of the other ones?
So the other things are the scratch pads here. They like to scratch their nails and they like to forage. So as the chain goes in here, it drops feed onto this little cup and it distributes it on these scratch pads. So they like to forage and pick up the feed from here.
So that's more their natural behaviors, the foraging.
It's more, yes. There's also, we talked about the weigh scale.
Yep.
The birds get weighed every so often. This perch pipe here is on a weigh cell, so that's where they get weighed.
So a bird just hops on there, perches on there, and that's how you're able to get the measurements on your system.
That's right.
And I see the bird having a drink back there, so all the orange cups there, those are the water nipples that they have access to clean water all day?
That's right. So they always have fresh, clean water every day, throughout the day. Always have access to feed.
That's another question we get is what's in feed. So can you tell us a little bit about what you put in your feed?
Yes, we put in wheat, barley, corn, some meal, soy, and amino acids, and some the vitamin pack.
Well, and I know from my perspective, one of the big questions that I get, or one of the biggest misperceptions I think that's out there, is what's not in feed. And a lot of people are concerned about added hormones and steroids. And so can you speak for your farm that you don't put any added hormones and steroids in your feed?
We do not, absolutely not.
Yeah, and that's true because we know it's illegal in Canada, has been for decades. But
Right.
I always like talking to farmers and having you confirm that. So George, we talked about the perches, the scratch pads, the feed, the water, the lighting, even the weigh scale. Is there anything else in this system that makes an enriched system unique?
Yes, there is. Let's walk over to the nest box.
All right.
So this here is the nest box.
Can you explain to us what the nest box is for?
It's for laying eggs. The birds like, when they go and lay their egg, they like to have privacy. So this is a fully enclosed nest box where they go in there and lay their eggs in private.
And so these flaps here not only gives them privacy, but also...
Exactly, it also makes it darker.
Can we get a peek inside?
We sure can. Let me just open it up.
And so I noticed right away too, that whereas you pointed out all the lights over there to make it nice and uniformly bright, I noticed there's no lights in the nest box. Is that again because that's what the birds prefer? They like that dark, private area to go lay their eggs?
Yes, we try to make the nest as dark as possible for them.
Because that's what they'd seek out if naturally.
Yes.
How often, on average, will each hen lay an egg?
Each hen will lay an egg every 30 hours, so that is almost an egg a day.
And that works out to over 300 eggs per year?
Yes, around 338 to 340 eggs per year.
And so I also see this wire here, and I understand it plays a role in protecting the eggs. Can you explain what it is and how it works for us?
Yeah, so most of the time it's down. So that way the egg that gets laid will roll down here and it'll get stopped by this wire. So every 7 to 8 minutes, it'll automatically go up and let the egg roll onto the egg belt. That way it stays nice and safe on here. and it doesn't smash into other eggs.
And that's important for you to make sure that all the eggs that come out of your barn are in good quality and no cracks and things like that.
That's absolutely correct. We also can see here in the nest, there's nest pads.
Okay.
So we try to make it as comfortable for the birds as possible when they lay their egg. It also protects the eggs from the wire.
And so that it's just softer for their feet when they're laying an egg?
Yes. And also, just to point out some more things here, the hen goes into the nest, lays the egg, and then we want that hen out of the nest as soon as possible. So most of the time they're hungry, they're thirsty after laying an egg, so they'll want to go eat and drink. So
Makes
here
sense.
with this anti-eating grill, we prevent them from eating a feed.
Okay.
So it makes them go out of the nest.
So the idea is you want them to come into the nest, lay their egg in private, in the darkness, and then get out of the nest to give the next hen the turn to come in.
That's right.
Well, George, thanks for showing us the nest box and explaining the entire enriched system and what makes it so unique. I do have one more question about something you told us earlier, that you inspect the birds individually as part of the animal care program, which we know is based on the code of practice for the care and handling of pullets and laying hens. And so I understand that you inspect the feather cover and the foot health. Would you be able to walk us through those inspections?
Sure, I can. Let me just close this first.
Sure.
Okay, so here we have the foot. We're going to check the feet first.
All right.
Make sure there's no cracks or bruises or cuts in the feet. Make sure there's no missing nails. They look good. And
Looks
also
good.
the feather coverage, they're nice and white and no blood. Yeah, this bird looks great.
She's very healthy and very calm.
Very calm, very happy.
Now I'm just curious, above and beyond the animal care program, what are the types of things you look for when you're walking the barn every day?
Yeah, so one thing that's very important is the combs on the birds. You gotta make sure they're nice and red. A comb will tell you lots. They have different meanings. One meaning is it'll tell you what the gender of the bird is, if it's a male or female. The males have way bigger combs and the females have smaller combs. But it'll also tell you if the bird is healthy or if it's not. So if you see stripes of white, the tips will have purple or they're shriveled, it'll tell you there's something going on with these birds. So
that's a nice healthy bird.
that is a nice healthy bird. Okay. So I also check the mouth to make sure it's nice and healthy. Make sure I don't see any ulcers in there, which would mean toxins. So this bird obviously has his nice clean mouth. So healthy bird.
Healthy bird. That's what we like. So George, you've shown us all through your barn. You've walked the birds with us. What is your favorite part about being an egg farmer?
My favorite part, walking the barn, coming down here in the morning, hearing the birds singing, seeing them running around the cage freely. And I also enjoy picking eggs in the packing room there.
And how does it make you feel knowing that you do provide fresh, nutritious, affordable food for Albertans?
Obviously, it makes me feel wonderful to be able to produce those fresh, nutritious, affordable eggs for you guys.
Well, George, I want to thank you so much for opening your barn to us, inviting us onto your farm to show us your layer operation. Really appreciate it. And is there any last thing that you'd like to say before we go?
Thank you for coming and eat eggs.
Awesome. So thank you for joining us on this tour today. We hope you had a great time taking a look at a modern egg farm. And this farm here is just one of more than 170 family egg farms and Hutterite colonies here in Alberta, producing fresh, nutritious, local food each and every day. Those 170 farms, they care for more than 3 million laying hens, produce over 98 million dozen eggs a year. That's almost 1 billion eggs a year produced right here in Alberta by farmers like George. George, I just want to say thank you for opening your farm to us, for giving us a tour of your facility. You have an amazing farm. You're such a fantastic farmer, the reigning producer of the year here in Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, George. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.